Dear learners, I hope you're all doing well and are eagerly waiting for this program to begin, isn't it? This is Adiba Anis welcoming you to this program on business communication. This program has been specially designed for the students of our MBA program. I believe this will also help the students from our PGDM and BBA programs. Today, we will be discussing of Lesson 2 of Unit 1 from the course of Business Communication bearing course code 1305. Our discussion today will consist of the fundamentals of business communication. Before we begin with, please take some papers and a pen so that you can take notes whenever necessary, and then you can discuss them with your tutor or the course teacher assigned for business communication from the School of Business. After attentively listening to our program, you will be able to understand principles and functions of business communication, why external and internal communication are necessary for a business, the barriers of business communication, and finally, the process of business communication. Till now, we have talked about a lot of things, but we haven't yet had a look at the principles of business communication. The principles of business communication depict managing your mail or email content, reducing overload or cutting down unnecessary information from your messages, managing instant message privacy and security, restricting contact lists on professional instant messaging accounts to business associates for avoiding inadvertently sending a personal message to a business associate, being alert as of possible virus infections and security risks with messages, attachments, and contact lists, saving significant instant messaging exchanges or logs for future reference if the software does not do so automatically, and finally using tone to build goodwill. This can be done by being respectful but not demanding, being modest, not arrogant, being polite, not sarcastic, and of course being positive and tactful, not negative and condensing. We can readily see how vast the field of business communication is. There are immense lot of technologies that are being used in the fast-paced world of business communication for conducting professional communication issues. So, now we will be going to the functions of business communication. Let's have a look at the functions of communication. Information plays a vital role in communication, in facilitating decision making and problem solving. Control refers to a lot of things. Control means power to influence people's behavior. Motivation refers to fostering, motivating people, making changes in their attitudes. Emotional experience or expressions relate to functions of communication in expressing or letting out the feelings, the inner feelings that we deal with. Learners, I think thus far discussed you have understood how important communication is in our daily life as well as in our professional life. Now, we will take this scope of discussing how important business communication is. The importance of a communication to an organization is critical to its success. Any organization cannot succeed or survive without communicating with its audience, both external and internal. Business communication is a means of modifying one's behavior, changing effects, or passing information. Business communication can be thus both internal and external. In case of internal communication, we deal with the people inside the organization. In case of external communication, we deal with the people outside of the organization. Rapid technological advancements have made their way, and Thus, communication has to be done properly with due care. Without doing so, we cannot achieve our success. That being said, we are now going to discuss about the types of communication. There are two types: internal communication and external communication. As you can see from the image, internal communication deals with the people within the organization. There can be superiors, co-workers, subordinates. This communication is done to conduct business or activities within the organization. Next, we have external communication. From the image, you can see that external communication occurs between the organization and outside parties. This can be people, this can be public, this can be customers, this can be the government. This is done to inform people of what the organization is doing, communicate with suppliers so that we can have materials ready at hand. We can talk with the public to know the policy and regulations that will be affecting the conduct of the organization as a whole. Now we have come to the next topic of our discussion: barriers in business communication. A good organization has to look after a lot of issues. There are barriers in this field of communication as well. Nothing runs smoothly. Let's have a look at the image where we can see the different types of barriers that a person as well as an organization has to face in the field of communication. Language, technical content, not recognizing receivers' needs, inadequate feedback, emotional interference, degree of knowledge of both the sender and the receiver, quantity of information, inappropriate medium, lack of honesty or trust, cultural differences, poor listening skills, and finally, hierarchy. For the convenience of our discussion, the barriers have been divided in 5 classes. These are mechanical barriers, physical barriers, psychological barriers, semantic and language barriers, and finally, status barriers. Now, we will be discussing about mechanical barriers, which is also called faculty mechanism. A communication may not run properly if the mechanism that carries it breaks down. Suppose you have written something in a Word file using Bijoy Bangla font, but while you are taking a printout, the computer has been turned on to Times New Roman font. The thing that comes out will not be a very easy thing to read. Think again of a letter that has been sent as a mirror image via email. Whatever comes out to the receiver will be very hard to decipher. That being said, whenever the interface or the environment is going through a problem or a barrier, that can be said as mechanical barrier. Other problems can be a disturbing microphone or a sound system in a meeting place, poor listening skills, or telephone lines that are being disrupted, poor printing or paper quality, atmospherics of a radio or television, etc. Next, we arrive to physical barriers. This occurs in situations when sometimes there are background noises that hamper the flow of communication or messages. If the listener is too far away from the speaker, he or she will not be able to listen to what the sender has sent as a message. Suppose if a telegram you have sent and it has arrived at a delayed time, the urgency of the message will not be remaining. That's why we can say such things end up to physical barriers. Now we go to psychological barriers, which readily can be understood to be the understanding or the level of mental stature of the sender or the receiver. A person weak of hearing or eyesight has to be sent a message accordingly so that they can properly understand what is said in the message. The age, mental condition, or the mental stature of a person dictates what their level of understanding is. Prior education or knowledge about the subject can help one to understand a subject better when delivered. Without that, in many cases, people will fail to understand the importance or the urgency of a message delivered. Loyalty to certain brands or parties can also fall in this category. Suppose you are loyal to a certain brand, then you will not very easily switch over to another one. Emotional and personality limitations also affect person's choice or decision. Fixed images about people or organizations also impact people's choice over receiving a message in certain light. They might think of a message rather in a different way than it was sent. Fourth, we have semantic and language barriers. Think of your friend who talks in a local dialect. Maybe you find that hard to understand, but maybe some other people enjoy it feeling comfortable. That can be a barrier for you or that person communicating with you. This occurs when sender's experience level with words differ from that of the receiver. Words from one environment may not fit words from another environment. Language barrier is such when my understanding of a certain word has a meaning and your understanding of that very word differs from my one. Suppose one wants to use an abstract feeling and say that one of his known young person is quite impatient, but to give it a total feeling, they can easily say youth is impatient. Finally, we arrive to the last barrier, which is status barrier. This is another type of psychological barrier. Take for example a farmer who is quite avid of his field, but he might feel nervous while talking to any high official from the agriculture board. This can happen because he thinks his knowledge is not up to the mark of that certain high official. This is an easy example to understand status barrier. Status symbols suppose luxury or comfort or level of knowledge or understanding also signify the level or the way people think they differ from others. The Times magazine once commented, American businessmen need to allow for differences between American and South Asian cultures. Only then they will be able to do business with people from Asia. Finally, we arrive to the last topic of our today's discussion. It is the process of business communication. We all know that communication occurs through a certain process. This has a number of components. With a look to the image, you will find out that all of them fall in direct places to carry out the process in full. Let's have a look at this image and then go to the discussion. After looking at the image, we can find out the first box carries the word source. Source can also be called the sender who has the intention of sending a certain message. Then we have the word encode. Encode is the process of coding a certain message the source or the sender wants to send. This is, suppose we can say chair, but to give it a clear meaning, we can say something to sit on. Then we have channel. Channel is the media through which message is being carried. In acoustic communication, air is the channel through which message is being carried. Then we have noise. Noise can easily be termed as disturbance. Various channels suffer from numerous different types of noise. One example can be the disturbing sounds you hear in telephone conversation that hampers your capacity of listening to what the other party is talking about or the things you say to be delivered to the other party. Then we have receiver. Receiver is the person who is receiving or who the message is directed to from the source. He or she decodes this message, which is actually translating to the level of understanding of this receiver what the sender or the source has sent. Now we have feedback. We already know what feedback means. Replying, right? Okay, let's see what it is written in our book. This is the content decoded by the receiver. It is also called output. Finally, we have fields of response. This is the process, the relevance of the code becoming obvious. That means the codes of the sender and receiver must at least have a common level of understanding or common meaning. The frame of reference is a sum of experiences in the form of each person's knowledge, beliefs, and values. So, on the basis of that, the body of personal knowledge, each member of the audience decodes a message. And as the members of audience differ, their understanding, making out meanings can also differ. With that, we have arrived at the end of our today's lesson. I hope you have understood and taken notes of what we discussed today. From our discussion of business communication today, we can sum up the following points, which are principles and functions of business communication. We have understood why internal and external communication is necessary. We have found out the barriers of communication, and then we have gotten a brief idea of the process of communication. Dear learners, at the end of our today's discussion, I would request you to go thoroughly through your textbooks and have a better understanding of our discussion. If you feel any problem in understanding our discussion, please write to the course teacher, Business Communication, School of Business, Bangladesh Open University, Gazipur 1705. Hope to see you soon with a new topic of discussion. Till then, keep studying. Thank you.